public, both present and watching on the webcast, that the board is a consumer protection agency subject to the Open Meetings Act. As a reminder, anyone present who's interested in receiving continuing education credit, remember to sign in and out on the designated sheet in the back of the room. Since the meeting is being webcast, we respectfully request that when called upon to speak, please come to the speaker's table and speak directly into the microphone. This will ensure those individuals watching the webcast are aware of all discussion and action. As indicated on the agenda, the board will convene in closed session. Upon conclusion of closed session, the board will reconvene in open session and will adjourn the meeting in open session. Rules are, in the event a quorum of the board is unable to attend the meeting, or the board is unable to maintain a quorum once the meeting is called to order, members present may, at the president's discretion, continue pursuant to Business and Profession Code 4309C, as well as continue to discuss items from the agenda and make recommendations to the full board at a future meeting. So at my discretion, that's what we're going to do. Now,
Item 3. We have before item 3.
I'm sorry,
Do you have any recognitions today?
no, we don't. We have no recognition. So, is there anyone out here who is here to receive a 40-year pin that did not sign in? No. Okay. In that case, we can either go ahead with the committee. Are there any public comments on the agenda? No. Well, we're all geared up, ready to go, so I guess we can.
Yeah, I actually do. So, Mr. President, at last meeting, there was a little conversation about maybe creating a new committee of the Board of Pharmacy. And I think it would be a great idea. The whole purpose of this committee would look at some of the rules and regulations that we have implemented as part of the board and try to find ways of streamlining those rules and regulations. And so I'm looking to see if we could have a discussion of a government efficiency committee, or we could choose whatever name we want, but that's the name of the day. Any discussion on that?
Well, I think we can put it on for future.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a future agenda item,
Sure.
and that's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Would you want to send it to Ledge and Reg for them to determine if that's maybe something they could take under? So it seems like part of the year they're busy.
subcommittee.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should do that.
But the other thing, part of the year
But
they're
we
busy.
can't do anything about
I
that.
can't talk anymore about it.
Well,
It seems like part of the year they're busy and part of the year they're not, so maybe.
My question is, I'm not familiar with your board administrative manual and what is within the purview of the president. If in some boards, it's within the purview of the president to establish committees. So.
Yeah, from my understanding, Counselor, the board president has that ability to establish committees and choose its members.
So then you can take your
So, on the
suggestions.
next meeting,
You could announce the formation of a committee if that is within
Correct.
your purview.
And Counselor, another quick question along those lines. I'm assuming that that does not have to go to a vote. I'm assuming that the next meeting, the president of this board could establish the members of that committee
Correct.
without discussion.
I would have to see your administrative manual, but if it's within the purview of the president to
Absolutely.
create committees, then he
Yeah,
can give an update as to the committee structure at the next board meeting and say that committee has been established and these are the members that he has appointed, if that's within his purview.
And in the meantime, any members here that would like to be on that committee, please let me know.
And, the committee, would hopefully look at, multiple things. Number one, what's in our purview doesn't have to go through rulemaking, some of the changes. And I'd like to probably provide a list of 10 different things I think we could streamline. And then we'll take a look at those 10 items and make sure we can do them administratively versus legislatively or through a rulemaking process.
Good idea. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I don't think I'm gonna start yet. One of the things I can do, I can treat this as a committee, and we can hear the petitions and make a recommendation to the full board for voting. But we're only about 10 minutes away, I think, from having a quorum, so I think it's better to.
And just to be clear, Mr. President, that process is different when we're a committee. We can hear the petitions, but then we can't vote on it. It has to be sent to the full board versus when we have a quorum, we can hear of items, go into closed session, make recommendations and move forward. Is that correct?
Correct.
And the other issue would be that if another board member joins us mid-petition, if that person has not heard the evidence, he or she cannot vote on the matter in closed
So,
session.
does that mean that we can start, we can hear the petition, if the person walks in, we can then vote without the person as a.
That person would not be able to participate in the deliberations if he or she has not heard the evidence. So it might be less disruptive to wait a few minutes. I don't know how long we are until we get a quorum. So they're two separate issues. One is whether or not you can operate as a board versus committee. The other issue is whether or not that board member who appears mid-petition would be entitled to participate.
No, but what I'm saying is if that board member comes in and then therefore we have a quorum, for those who are here during the petition, during the discussion and so on, would we then be able to vote as a board even though the remainder of us would not constitute a quorum?
In my opinion, no, because that person would not be entitled to participate without having heard all the evidence.
But that person could recuse him or herself. That's correct, right?
I don't know if it's a matter of recusal. I think it's a matter of
Bottom line is we'll
not being able to participate.
Okay. Fair enough.
Okay.
Are you the ALJ? The ALJ may have some thoughts on that.
I think we're 5 or so minutes out. We might as well just wait. Both of the attorneys have a holding provision in their contract for clients.
Yeah.
So I got that too.
Great, Albert, so this way.
This is back ago.
Oh.
That's something about dropping off a granddaughter on the way.
So we've got 5 minutes. 4-minute call.
Yeah, I'm sending a break right now.
Do you think you might think it's right to 10?
No.
Do you think you might think it's right to 10?
Nice to meet you. Yes,
Right,
yes.
right.
Correct. Yeah, sorry about this.
Ricardo Sanchez, public member.
Albert Wong, professional member.
Alan Chad, professional member.
Ryan Brooks, public member.
Greg Lippy, public member.
Debbie Gill, professional member. Maria Serpa, professional member.
Okay, with a quorum now being established, the board will entertain any public comments for items not on the agenda. I asked before, but I'm asking again. Okay. Okay. No 40-year people. Okay, now we're going to go into the petitions. So we're now going into closed session.
No?
No, we're in open session.
Oh, we're not there.
We're going to close session after.
Right,
petitions.
after the petition. Okay, And we will begin. I'm going to turn it over to ALJ.
Thank you. My name is Warren Wong, and I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings. Mr. Phillips, did you have an agreed order to call these matters with the different parties?
Yes,
Okay, so which one did you, what's the order you want to call them?
just the order in which they appear on the agenda. So we have Kim Nguyen, and then secondly Kaiser, and then thirdly Raymond Duro. We have agreements that they're all here. There's a fourth item, Jamal Zanuni, that's been postponed and will not be here today.
Very good, so I'll call the matter of the petition of Kim Khan Nguyen. It's OAH number 2019-120232. All right, Mr. Phillips, if you would state your appearance for the record, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Jeffrey Phillips. I'm the Deputy Attorney General with the Office of the Attorney General.
Good morning. And Mr. Turner, if you would state your appearance for the record, please.
Yes, Jonathan Turner, counsel for the petitioner Kim Nguyen, who's present as well to my left.
Okay, thank you. And again, this is OAH number 2019-120232, and a quorum has been established. So Mr. Phillips, if you'd like to give your summary or present the packet.
Yes, Your Honor. First, I'd like to mark as Exhibit A, the original petition package.
Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and mark this package as Exhibit 1 for identification. Mr. Turner, do you have any objection to 1 being admitted for all purposes?
No, Your Honor.
And 1 is so admitted. All right, Mr. Phillips, if you'd like to provide your summary.
Thank you, Your Honor. This petition is brought pursuant to Business and Profession Code Section 4309, which allows a person whose license has been revoked, suspended, and in this case placed on probation to petition the board for a early termination from probation. The requirement is that they must serve at least 2 years of a probation period of, that is a probation period of 3 or more. Ms. Nguyen is subject to a 5-year probation period. She has almost 3 years into her probationary period. So she satisfies the requirement to bring the petition. And Ms. Nguyen became a pharmacist. The license was issued by the board in April 2003. The matter upon which the accusation was filed was a board inspection that occurred in June 2015. And during that board inspection, Ms. Nguyen was the pharmacist on duty at West Coast Pharmacy here in North Highlands in the Sacramento area. Upon inspection, the board inspector immediately noticed that there were many controlled substances out in the open, that the safes were unlocked, not properly secured, and that there were 2 pharmacy technicians working on duty with only 1 pharmacist. Prior to this inspection, respondent had reported drug losses in a DEA 106 form in September 2014 and then October 2014. The losses were to controlled substances alprazolam, oxycodone, and then liquid codeine. The allegations and the accusation, which were stipulated to, and respondent provided a stipulation that was secured by opposing counsel here, Mr. Turner. The allegations and respondent stipulated and did not contest the allegations that there was a failure to report the drug losses within 30 days. The DEA forms were late. There was no current inventory of the pharmacy. The inspector observed 14 patients who were provided prescription drugs, but no oral consultation was provided. There was no quality assurance program because there was no medication error binder and there were no quality assurance reports, although respondent did admit that there were drug errors. The pharmacy technician ratio was not appropriate. The ratio is 1-to-1 for the first pharmacy technician and then thereafter 2-to-1. And it violated that because there were 2 pharmacy technicians working under 1 pharmacist. There was no verification of 1 prescription for oxycodone, so there was a corresponding responsibility violation that in terms of the medical necessity of that prescription, it hadn't been verified. There were dispensing errors. There was no self-assessment for the compounding drugs. Some of the compounding drugs had been expired, and there were expired compounding drugs on the shelf during that inspection. So basically, very sloppy practices. So the agreed stipulation was 5 years probation, 60-day suspension, costs in the amount of $7,700.25, remedial education of 5 hours per year, 25 hours total during the 5-year probation period, and community service and an ethics course. All these conditions of probation have been adhered to and have been completed. The community service was in the form of health fairs and health screenings that respondent has provided. Continuing education of 79 hours have been verified and 7 letters of recommendation. In order for this board to grant the petition, subsection 4309D requires that in considering a petition for modification or early termination, the administrative law judge and this board should consider the following factors. Number 1, all the activities of the petitioner since the disciplinary action was taken. In other words, what is she doing today to make sure she doesn't have these sloppy practices? Number 2, you have to take a look at the offenses for which brought her here in probation and the seriousness of that and the effectiveness of the discipline. Number 3, petitioner's activities during the time the license was in good standing, so her whole license period. She has been licensed for almost 15 years. And then fourthly, her documented rehabilitation efforts, which is part of the petition package, and petitioner's general reputation for truth and professional ability. So my question to the petitioner, I have laid out what the petition is all about. I'll defer to the petitioner and the board further questions with regard to the rehabilitative efforts and to assure that respondent is safe to practice and that probation is no longer warranted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Mr. Turner, do you wish to call Ms. Nguyen at this time?
Sure, I
Okay.
can do that.
Okay, so Ms. Nguyen, if you would raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you will provide in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you may put your hand down. And if you would start by stating and spelling your full name for the record, please.
K-I-M, last name is N-G-U-Y-E-N.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Turner?
Yes, Ms. Nguyen, I know you've completed an ethics course as part of your probation. Can you tell us a little bit about what you learned from that ethics course?
From the ethics class that I attend 2-day course in down South California, I learned sets of moral obligations that the pharmacist must know in practice to promote the good and well-being of patients. And in that, I am expect that it is important to be familiar with all the laws and regulations regarding pharmacy, and to follow those laws as best as I could. At the class, I was reminded and reinforced that I must practice ethically at all times, even though if no one is watching what I'm doing.
And have you been working as a pharmacist while you've been on probation?
Yes, I'm working.
And where have you been working?
I have been working at Anchor Pharmacy in Stockton.
Okay. And how long have you been working there?
I have been working since March 2017.
And how many hours a week do you work there on average?
The lease is 16 hours a week, 2 days.
And have you received any feedback from your employer on your job performance?
Yes, he thinks that I'm doing an excellent job. He said that I am a very hard worker and I am very dependable.
And since you've been working there, have you had any complaints or against you or problems in terms of your professional competency?
No, I have not.
And approximately how many hours of continuing education have you done since being placed on probation?
Up to now, I have completed about 110 hours, and plus I have been attending the board meetings.
And how many board meetings have you attended?
I received about 27 hours in credit.
And do you take full responsibility for the issues that led to your being placed on probation?
Yes, I am very remorseful for what I have done, and I take 100% responsibility.
What safeguards do you now take as a pharmacist to make sure those problems from, I guess it was 2014 and 2015, do not happen again?
I make sure that I consult to every new patient and prescriptions. I make sure that the safe is always locked. I always check the expiration dates of medication and pull it off the shelf if it's expired. I make sure that the pharmacist technician ratio is compliant. I keep updates with the law and review them as often as necessary. Whether it is a minor or insignificant dispensing error, I have to do a quality assurance report. I make sure when filling controlled substance, I have to take the time as much as necessary to validate all the information needed. I make sure that I am never in a situation where the workload is more than I can handle. And now I know that if there is a theft, I must report it both to the board as well as the DEA. And whenever I am in doubt, I contact the board's inspector line to clarify the information.
And how long have you been a pharmacist before the issues occurred that led to your current probation?
It was about 13 years.
And had you ever been a pharmacist in charge prior to then?
No, that did not.
And were you the pharmacist in charge of the pharmacy where the issues occurred?
Yes, I took that job.
And have you done anything to better familiarize yourself with the duties of a pharmacist in charge since being placed on probation?
Since I was placed on the probation, I have done the course regarding laws and ethics, regarding dispensing and preventing opioid reversals. DEA inventory and enforcement actions, pharmacist's responsibility in the management of controlled substance, validating precautions for controlled substance, drugs inventory control, stopping controlled substance drugs reversions, medication error reporting, staying compliant with the Federal Controlled Substance Act, expanding the pharmacist's role in preventing opioid abuse, understanding abuse deterrent formulations and identifying risks, a system approach to improving medication safety, the corresponding responsibility of a pharmacist, and when attending board meetings and continuing education lesson that was offered by the State Board of Pharmacy, I learned great information about prescription drugs abuse and diversions and what a pharmacist needs to know. It has given me a better understanding of all pharmacy laws and the importance of following all those laws.
And have you gotten involved with any professional pharmacy organizations since being placed on probation?
I have involved in a few associations. They are California Pharmacist Association, Sacramento Valley Pharmacist Association, and the other one is the Sacramento Vietnamese Medical, Dental, and Pharmacy Associations.
And how can you assure the board there will be no future problems like those that occurred back in 2014, 2015?
Because I have undergone a lot of education and trainings since then. I am very sorry about what happened. I have been working for nearly 3 years since being placed on probation without any problems at all. And because I worked as a pharmacist for 13 years prior to the problems that arose at this one pharmacy where I was a PAC for this time without any problems, I would constantly reflect myself of what I have been through and what happened and consequence of my license status. I will always try my best to actively engage in learning to maintain professional competence and not to depart from the principles of ethics guidelines.
And lastly, why at this time do you want to get off of probation?
Because my current employment is limited on the hours and low pay, and I have been looking for a better job since then, but I have not been able to, probably because I am on probation.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Phillips, any questions?
No questions, really.
Are there any questions from the board?
You start with right, left, or left, right.
Mr.
I don't-
Sanchez?
I don't have any questions.
Now how you do the inventory now, the narcotic?
I'm not a pharmacist in charge now, but for the narcotic, we have to do the reconciliations every 3 months.
Do you have a perpetual inventory?
Yes, the pharmacies, they have.
How long were you to pick at the North Highlands Pharmacy?
I don't think it was that long. It was about 1 year.
Oh, okay. And so did you fill out a self-assessment when you started?
I did feel, but I kind of passed through it. I didn't really.
Pay attention to it, yeah. And just formality, right? And then what happened to the owner of the store? Yeah, as far as what was was that
Discipline?
discipline wise?
The pharmacy where I worked for was for a couple pharmacist owners. They had owned the pharmacy before, and they also have one currently opening at a different town. So they had this one as the second one, and I worked for them for this one. And when the overnight theft occurred 2 times, I didn't know anything until the morning at 8:30 when I came into work, and I found out.
Sounds like you're unprepared to get picked.
Because the owner, I relied entirely on the owners because I assumed that he was the owners, and he normally told me what to do. He told me what to do when I didn't think of, being. I put a really high risk on myself.
Now, you said the reason that you want to have this probation shortage decreased is that you feel like you're being taken advantage of because you're on probation now?
Do you mean that if I am being...
Are your hours limited because of the probation and the pay lower?
Yes, and I don't have choice for looking for a different place.
Thank you.
First, thank you for coming in front of here. I know it's never an easy task to sit in front of a bunch of strangers and tell your story, so thank you for coming. I appreciate it. And my question is, I believe you stated you've been a pharmacist for 13 or 14 years, is that correct?
Yes.
Within those 13 or 14 years, have you had any other investigations into pharmacies as an inspector showed up?
Did I have what?
As an inspector showed up throughout your
when
career?
I was working?
Throughout your career, any time in your career over the 13 or 14 years?
No, I did not have.
So that was your first experience with an inspector come into your pharmacist?
Yes.
That is? Okay. No other questions?
I have to. If I come into you with a prescription for Cardizem, how would you consult me? What would you say?
Can you repeat the questions?
Yes, if I came in with a prescription for Cardizem and it's the first time that I'm taking it, how would you consult? What would you say to me as a consultation?
For Cardizem?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So I would ask that, I would normally ask that, is this your first time taking it?
And I say yes.
Okay. So I will tell you the directions based on the labels, and I ask you if it's true that you are taking it for high blood pressure or the heart conditions, and I will consult you on the side effects like headache, dizziness.
Okay, thank you. There's one other question I have. There were a lot of violations, and they were mentioned. But in your application, you state, I was placed on probation. The reason for my probation was due to some oversights and overall poor housekeeping. That sounds very weak compared to all the violations that occurred. Do you understand completely all the violations that occurred?
Yes, I do. The main reasons was that I was overloaded with the work every day. The the volumes of the work was too much for for one pharmacist in an 8 hours shift a day, filling about 400 averagely prescriptions a day, and I had to do so many other things that I was asked to be done by the owner.
But you understand, these were not just some oversights, I mean, these were serious violations.
Right, like during the inspection, especially during the inspections, I wasn't able to keep up with the workflow because I had to provide information for the inspector, and I could not keep myself oversighting the workflow.
Okay, lastly, will you want to be a PIC again?
Oh, I would not remember.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for coming and presenting in front of us. It kind of helps us understand more, maybe what had happened. So I was actually looking at your application also, and you said a couple questions. Just technically, question number 15, you didn't answer. It says, have you ever had disciplinary action taken against your pharmacist license in this state or any other state?
No, just this one as the only one.
So you would have answered that yes or no?
Well, how should I answer?
I'm sure it's just an oversight, but.
Oh, well, besides.
So has your license ever been disciplined in California?
Yes, this one.
Right, okay. And then, in that same paragraph that Mr. Lippy was, quoting from, I believe, you start out, in your response to question 16, my license was not revoked. But in fact, your license was revoked. And we went ahead and stayed it, put you on probation. I mean, so do you understand, we actually revoked your license?
Okay, yes, I do.
I just wanna make sure, kind of like he did, I just wanna make sure you understand how serious this is.
Yes.
What happened in that pharmacy is not acceptable. We don't see that list like that hardly ever. And it was pretty extensive, and there were some pretty scary things in there. So when you said the inspector was in your store, because as Mr. Brooks was asking, as a staff pharmacist, you could be the only pharmacist in the store, and a board inspector could come in. And so I think you said that part of the reason, and if I misunderstood what you just said, please clarify. Let me know, please. I might have misunderstood. I thought I heard you say that part of what happened that day is the inspector came in, and that's why the workflow kind of got out of hand. Maybe that's why you weren't able to consult. Is that what you? Is that what happened?
Yes, that is a part of it.
So if you're a pharmacist working in a store, and you're the only one on duty, and an inspector comes in again, how are you going to handle that situation better?
That was my first time being inspected, so I myself and my staff respect the inspectors more than our workflow, so that's what we felt. But now I know that I have to follow the laws, that I can excuse the inspector for a minute to come out and consult the patient.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that is the right answer. Either you have to tell the patients that they need to wait, or you have to tell the inspector that that person needs to wait. But to kind of let everything go away and not take care of the public is probably not the right thing, the right decision. You also said that you're working at a pharmacy. The pharmacy you're currently working at, when did you start working there?
I started working since March 2017.
And so when it says, on the application again, probably is another oversight, where have you worked in the last 5 years? Why is that pharmacy not listed?
I'm sorry?
On your application, it says to list the pharmacy's location and type.
Prior to the,
Replication, okay.
okay, so those.
So you filled it out right, that was my bad.
Okay.
So you're good. And so I'm glad the ethics course was good. Your statement was a little bit interesting. You said that you're going to be ethical at all times, including when no one is looking. So in the past, do you think you had the philosophy that it was okay to be unethical when people weren't looking?
Not really. I did not intentionally violate any of the laws, but I was just being overwhelmed with the workload, and I kind of let myself bypass some.
And so if you were in that same situation, I know you're not going to be PIC, but you know, as staff pharmacists, sometimes we're there by ourselves too, and you can get overwhelmed in certain situations again.
Okay.
Not the board inspector, just a busy day. It's the Wednesday before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
How are you going to handle that situation differently so that you're continuing to, safely take care of, the public?
Before at this West Coast pharmacy, the owner expects me to clean up everything by the end of every day. But now, if I am unable to do that, I just cannot, and I just leave the work undone to be done for the next day instead, like to verify decryptions.
Okay. And then one last question. You went to our that DEA class. It sounds like we had. I think that's what you said. What was there one thing that you learned of that was the most significant?
You mean the DEA from the board meetings?
Yeah.
Oh, one thing, one very significant thing is pharmacist corresponding responsibility that I must follow at all times.
And how would you so just in Reader's Digest and the way you think, what does that mean, pharmacist corresponding responsibility?
At all times, I must follow all of the laws pertaining to the work, and especially for controlled substance dispensing, I have to take the time to investigate all the information on the prescriptions or on the profile, do all the steps like call the doctors to clarify, to look up at the cures report, and to sometimes I need to ask the patients the questions so that I don't miss.
Thank you very much.
Hi, it's Maria Serpa. Wanted to say that I appreciate your sincere testimony here today and being in front of us. I have a couple of quick questions just to follow up from your application that was very thorough. I noticed that the pharmacy itself remained open for only a few months after this investigation. Can you share with us why that pharmacy closed, and was it a result of the situation?
The owners, they kept their information really close to themselves. I did not know anything about it until the very last day that Rite Aid people came and they said that it's now it's belong to Rite Aid. And on that same date, the owner just came in and told me that he sold it to Rite Aid. I had no knowledge, or he didn't share with me anything.
The other is just a clarification, and maybe you can make a comment, is you had quite a few letters of recommendation, and one of them appears to be from a pharmacy board inspector. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so, is there anything you want to share with us as to why you asked the inspector to write a letter for you? Or did they offer, or what was the situation?
Oh, well, before I submit the applications, I was trying to get the recommendation letters from whomever I work with or became familiar with me. So she was one of those that I asked, and she was willing to write.
Thank you.
Oh, can I ask one more question, too? You said you were doing 400 a day, prescriptions a day. Was that you
Yes,
by yourself?
Yes, for just 8-hour shift.
Oh, that's simple. That's too much.
I got one more question. Now, with this happening, do you know how to handle your owner or your boss? Can you handle in the future? If they ask you something to do something that you know is against the law, you know how to handle it now?
Yes. They cannot force me to do the things that I don't feel comfortable with.
I actually have one additional question too. The board inspector that you're helping, you state, you stated that you've helped her and that it might actually be detrimental. You say, my voluntary assistance and participation in that investigation jeopardizes my current employment. Why would?
Could I just interrupt for just a second? I want to make sure that there's no discussion here about the potential current investigation. It sounds like it might be branching into that, and I want to make sure that we don't discuss any ongoing investigation on the board. And I don't know, I don't know the status of it, but I can be sure we don't get into that. Okay.
I'll withdraw.
Any further questions from the board? Okay, Mr. Turner, anything on you wanted to add by way of redirect?
No.
Okay. Mr. Phillips, anything further by recross?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Turner, or excuse me, Mr. Phillips, do you wish to give a closing?
The only closing that I have, I'll defer to the board on their final decision and deliberation, but based upon the requirements for granting the petition, all those requirements have been met, and I do not see any reason not to grant the petition, but whether or not the board grants it is entirely up to the situation, of course.
Thank you. Mr. Turner, do you wish to give a closing?
Sure, just a very short one, if that's okay. Just to reiterate what you've heard and what you have before you, Ms. Nguyen was a pharmacist for nearly 13 years, I think, before she encountered the problems as a pharmacist in charge, which was the first time she had done that in 2014, 2015. And she learned from those mistakes, as she stated in her petition under the response to question 16, the last sentence she states, I take full responsibility for my errors which led to my probation. So she absolutely takes full responsibility. She has been on probation for nearly 3 years now. We submitted the petition, I think, February 1st or so, but At this point, it's now been almost 3 years. She's done over 100 hours of continuing education. I think the summary you have indicates 79 hours of continuing education. And since that summary was written, we submitted an additional 27 hours that are in the packet. So we're looking at over 100 hours of continuing education, plus all the board meetings she's attended, essentially every one in Sacramento I think she's attended, all voluntarily, of course. And she is a member of now 3 associations as well. And she's been working without any issues for these 3 years. She's had no complaints, which is consistent with her record before this sort of aberrant situation in 2014, 2015. And so I believe, along with the Deputy Attorney General, that really she has met the requirements, and not only has she met the requirements to get off of probation, she's really gone above and beyond those requirements. And so I think the just decision is to terminate probation at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So the matters, the record's closed, the matters submitted. Mr. Turner, I believe you're familiar with the process. The board later will meet in closed session to decide the matter. So no decision will be issued at this time. Today, it will be in the future. Okay? So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the next matter we'll call is the Kaiser Permanente Pharmacy number 823.
Great.
So let's go ahead and take a brief break while the parties are getting set up. Department of Consumer Affairs, State of California, in the matter of the petition of Kaiser Permanente Pharmacy number 833. It's OEH number 2019-120-337. Before we get started into the matter, if I could establish a quorum, so let's take roll call starting with the member on my far right.
Carl Sanchez, public member.
Albert Wong, professional member.
Alan Chad, professional member.
Ryan Brooks, public member.
Greg Lippy, public member.
Debbie Veal, professional member.
Maria Serpa, professional member.
All right, thank you. A quorum is established. Mr. Phillips, if I could have you state your appearance for the record.
Yes, good morning, Jeffrey Phillips, Office of the Attorney General, on behalf of the Executive Officer of the Pharmacy.
Good morning, and if we could have Kaiser's representatives state their appearances as well.
Yes, Your Honor. John Gilbert, law firm of Hyman Phelps and McNamara on behalf of Kaiser Permanente Pharmacy 833.
And ma'am?
Yes, hi, good morning. Anita Vora, outpatient pharmacy manager and PIC of Kaiser Permanente Pharmacy 2833.
Okay, Mr. Phillips, do you wish to present the petition packet?
Yes, Your Honor, I have the original.
Can I ask one question? You said 2833, you said 833 in our papers.
833.
Is it all the same thing?
Yes, 833.
Thanks, I just want to make sure.
Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor, I have the original, I'd like to mark as Exhibit A and to offer it to evidence for all purposes. It was a petition package that before the board.
Thank you, and we'll go ahead and mark the packet as Exhibit 1 for identification. Mr. Gilbert, any objection to 1 for all purposes?
No, Your Honor.
And 1 is so admitted. Mr. Phillips, if you'd like to give your summary overview.
Yes, thank you again, Your Honor. This petition is brought pursuant to Business and Profession Code Section 4309, which allows an entity that's been placed on probation to file a petition for early termination of that probation, which is what this petition is asking. At least 2 years needs to have passed within the probationary period before a petitioner can present the petition, which the respondent here is already 3 years into a 5-year probationary period and having filed a petition after 2 years. So they comply with section 4309 in terms of the board hearing the petition and considering the petition must list and the board must consider the activities of the petitioner since the disciplinary action has been taken. So what have they done to remedy the situation? To consider the seriousness of the offense for which the petitioner was disciplined, and this is, I'll go into the details in a second. Thirdly, the petitioner's activities during the time the entity has been licensed. This entity has had a pharmacy permit since 2003. Fourth, the rehabilitative efforts in terms of the petition, what have they done to make sure that these acts don't resurface or repeat themselves? And then lastly, the petitioner's general reputation of truth and the professional ability. The entity is Kaiser Permanente Pharmacy. We're talking about the Modesto facility on Dale Road. And as I mentioned before, that pharmacy permit was issued in April 2003. What happened in December of 2013 is that the pharmacist in charge observed that there was a low inventory of the hydrocodone on the shelf. And so that inquiry led to an investigation. An internal investigation found that a janitor was stealing hydrocodone, and he admitted to stealing the hydrocodone for self-administration, and he'd also pass it out to his friends. So Kaiser did an audit from the period of June 27, 2013 to December 10th, 2013. So just over a 5-month period, and they saw a shortage of 64,460 tabs of hydrocodone. The janitor was immediately terminated. That was the source of the problem, or one of the sources. Then the PIC, the PIC, reported the drug losses to the board within a 30-day period, I believe. And they filed an amended report of the loss. It looks like they did a further inventory and disclosed an additional 14,000 tabs, total of 77,115 tabs of hydrocodone were unaccounted for, were missing. And so the board went in, did an audit, and took a look at their losses and the inventory and reconciled it, and the audit confirmed that there were in fact a little less, 75,266 unaccounted for losses of hydrocodone. The accusation was filed shortly thereafter, and a stipulation was signed. The stipulated hearing was the agreement in which Kaiser Permanente, the Modesto branch, they did not deny the allegations and gave up their right to defend against it at hearing, and essentially for purposes of this petition admitted to those missing hydrocodone. The term of probation is 5 years, standard term 1 through 15. In addition, a community service program was required to be implemented in the value of $10,000, and I believe that's been done, and responded. The petitioner can give more details about the community service program. The costs were repaid, reimbursable costs were in the amount of $5,732.30, and then a civil penalty of $100,000 was assessed and paid for the loss of drugs. The petition package goes in great detail about the rehabilitative efforts with regard to how is this pharmacy safe now. There's an implementation of camera security systems that the petitioner could give the board in great detail. So That is a summary of his case. The minimum requirements to grant the petition have been fulfilled. And there is no reason that I see that the petition cannot be granted, but that's within, again, the discretion of the board. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Gilbert, if you'd like to call your first witness.
Anita Flores, please.
Okay, ma'am, if you'd raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you will provide in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, you may put your hand down. And if I could have you spell your full name for the record, please.
Yes, Anita, Anita, last name is Vora, he is in Victory, Ohra.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Moore, could you provide me with
Do me a favor, can you move back and forth the microphone? It's easy to move, so you.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Ms. Moore, could you provide the board with a little bit about your background as a pharmacist?
Yes, I've been a pharmacist, a California pharmacist for 34 years now. I went to pharmacy school in Ohio, where I lived, Cincinnati, Ohio, graduated from University of Cincinnati Pharmacy School, moved out to California for the great weather, and I've been here ever since. I've been with Kaiser Permanente for 15 years. I've been their PIC at a couple of different locations over the 15-year time span. And I've been with this Kaiser Permanente 833, the pharmacy under probation. I've been with them since just prior to the probation commencement in November of 2016.
So just to be clear, you were not the pick at the time of the incident that caused that for the issues that were raised in regards to the pharmacy going on probation.
Correct, I was not the pick at the time.
Could you explain what action the company took in regard to the existing personnel at the pharmacy, if you know, prior to you being named as the pick?
Yes, I worked in the area with Kaiser, so I was aware of the situation. Kaiser, as I know it, took action pretty much immediately. I didn't know details of it since that was not my my particular pharmacy, but they reported the information as soon as they found out to the regulatory agencies, the police, the DEA, the Board of Pharmacy. Both boards came in, the Board of Pharmacy came in to investigate. I remember I was actually there one day when an investigator came in. They had sent me over just to just to work at the store for a day. The DEA was there for several months at a time. Kaiser took immediate action to change a lot of the processes that we had in place at the time, and they took it very seriously, I know, because we had a lot of changes that I saw at my location, and then it went throughout Northern California, things were spreading.
So, so the existing personnel that was there, do you know what happened in terms of any changes in personnel?
Yeah, the existing PIC, he left Kaiser a few months after that. I don't know whether it was resignation or what it was, but he left. He's working in the area in Modesto, elsewhere.
And could you describe when you came on as the pick, what actions, in your opinion, the company took to address the issues that were related to the theft and the action by the board?
Yes, when I came on as pick here at this location, there were already things that are already in place because this had come about in 2013. I didn't come on as the pick, and the probation didn't start till the end of 2016 basically. So things were already in place, but there's an escort policy that had been there since that time. So anybody that comes through our door, we always had to make sure there was a need to be in the pharmacy for one thing, but now there's a pharmacy personnel that will escort the person throughout their stay, their business in the pharmacy. Kaiser has an internal auditor that comes in monthly that audits the pharmacy. We do our own internal audits. We've had security increase in security cameras. It went from 15 cameras to 42 cameras. We have, oversight from our National Pharmacy Compliance Office that sees things at the back end. My pharmacist, we observe there's a lot of policies that have been changed, workflows that have changed. Anytime we remove a Schedule II medication from a cabinet to fill, it's returned immediately after that fill.
And could you also highlight the procedures that the pharmacy currently employs to address the issue, which was related to the fact that a GM was able to steal controlled substances basically without being found out for a period of time, and what are the things specifically that the pharmacy has done to address that?
Okay, yes, so like I mentioned, we have the escort policy so that anybody that is coming into the pharmacy, a staff member will actually escort them. We've had our environmental services, the housekeeping, janitorial staff, they are escorted. There's been times when we've been too busy to have an escort, so we will ask them to come back at a later time. We won't allow them in the pharmacy. The security cameras that I mentioned, there's increased security cameras. There's the door, actually the back back receiving door has been replaced. It's a more secure steel structure, I guess a higher grade of steel. The safes have been replaced to a more secure steel safe, and actually that happened maybe 2 years back. And then there's actually, I just got earlier this week, as enhanced security, there's an even stronger steel safe that we replaced it just because they want to be proactive, not that anything's happened, but I think they're just trying to be proactive. We do our Norco, our hydrocodone audits daily. My closing pharmacist will do that daily, each night before we leave. My staff is keenly aware if there's anything wrong, they're gonna report it right away. We have not had any losses since I took over, since the probation time period. But my staff is keenly aware of all these processes and workflows and the need for them.
In regard to, so in addition to what the pharmacy does, is there additional oversight that is provided by corporate, by region, or other compliance? And maybe you could just describe for the board what additional compliance or audits the pharmacy is subject to by the corporate.
Okay. So ever since 2013, to my knowledge, there's been a Kaiser auditor coming in, internal auditor. Who comes in monthly. The pharmacy, like I said, does their own audits, but this is an addition. We have, all of Kaiser has a business practice audit that they can have a pharmacy come into the pharmacy annually. Let's see, in the background, national compliance monitors drug, acquisitions, dispositions. If they see anything out of the ordinary, they will be reaching out. We have a report that comes out that's, we refer to it as Cognos. It's all of our invoices that come in monthly. I go through and I have to match up from that report, make sure that all my controlled drug invoices are actually there in my files. They have the reconciliation reports that they're looking at on the back end as well. So we have a team of people in the back end that will alert us if need be, if there's anything out of the ordinary.
And have you been subject to any board inspections since you've been there as I believe since 2016?
Yes, the board inspector, Diane Potter was our board inspector. She had been in 4 times. I actually met with her 3 times. I was on vacation one of the times, but she'd been into the pharmacy 4 times. And then we just had an inspection from the current board inspector. Diane, I believe, retired in July, so 5 inspections to date.
If you know, as Mr. Phillips had alluded to, the company also made some charitable contributions as part of the settlement. Are you aware of what the farmers did or what the company did in the way of those charitable contributions? If you can speak to them.
They went through Salvation Army. They thought that was best. I think they donated $10,000 through Salvation Army, and they were going to do the charitable work through Kaiser through that. There are numerous other charitable contributions. I have a sheet of them if needed.
So, would you, in your opinion, let's just ask your opinion since you've been there as the pick since you weren't there, do you believe that the company that has taken sufficient action and taken this matter seriously in regards to the programs that you're responsible at the pharmacy?
Oh yes, very, very seriously. I saw a huge culture change, if you want to call it that, from the time this incident happened. Since I was in the area, I could see that more directly, I guess I could say, and I could relate it. So I could put two and two together and see the changes that we had, that the organization had put through for us. We have a lot of training as well. I didn't mention that. A lot of training on this. We have annual corresponding responsibility training, and lots of training are, if I can elaborate, I guess, I don't know if I did, but we have any kind of return to stock, any items that return to stock. We have a workflow on that where different people, different staff members are involved in it. Our perpetual audits are done by differing pharmacists each month, so it's not the same pharmacist repeating it. So yeah, they've done quite a bit as far as changes.
Those are the only questions I had, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Phillips, any questions on Ross?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor. Could you discuss the locked cabinets and what the current practice is and how that changed? Because my understanding is that the custodian had access to the locked cabinets that were supposed to be locked after hours when the deaths occurred.
Okay. Yes, at the time, hydrocodone was not a Schedule II drug. This was back in 2013. I think it became Schedule II and shortly thereafter, 2014. So those medications were not actually Schedule II and did not need to be locked. And yeah, he did not have access to the locked cabinets where the drugs were. Those are only accessible to pharmacists. We currently have scan cards or keys that we can monitor who goes in and out of those. And those scan cards are only distributed to our pharmacists.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Any questions by the board, starting with Mr. Sanchez?
You start with the other next time. I'm just kidding. No, I've had great experience with Kaiser. Every time I've dealt with the pharmacies, very professional and the way they carry on with everything. It's very reassuring though how fast you guys address the security, weaknesses you had. The question I had was, did this, having had this problem, did it affect other Kaisers also? Did you implement that with other Kaisers as far as corporate?
Yes, definitely. It started in our area. I mean, pharmacy national people showed up immediately who started trainings, and it went to all the different Kaisers. I mean, they didn't all know what the reason behind it was, but everybody started getting this, and the new workflows and new processes that were implemented went throughout Northern California. Yes.
Yeah, well, it's reassuring just to see how fast you guys addressed it.
Yeah, no, it was addressed immediately. Like I said, I had privy to it only because I was in the area close enough to put two and two together, so I knew this is where it was coming from. So yeah, it was acted on immediately.
So I was a little surprised that, with all this opioid problem going on, that those hydrocodone wasn't locked, even though it's not Schedule II. So So right now you only put on the locker on the Schedule 2 only, right?
Yes, that's all that's required. Schedule 2s were locked up. However, we do have Schedule 3 through 5 drugs, and so we have a
That's
list.
what I'm thinking.
Yeah, we keep a perpetual inventory of selected high version drugs. They are not locked, but we do keep a perpetual inventory of those. So even those are audited, monthly by myself. My technicians audit several times a week those particular drugs. So it's just being proactive. So they're not required to be letter locked.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. You have a lot of muscle relaxant and you have the promethazine and codeine is highly abusable. And if you only lock those Schedule 2 and the other one outside, they still could come and steal it. So I would suggest you pay a little more attention. Maybe you should lock those items also.
Yeah, we actually we have the escort policy, so that kind of eliminates somebody from the outside taking it, and then we do have our internal audits, and then national compliance. We monitor it on the back end. So yeah, but I understand your suggestion definitely. Yes.
Specifically, nobody wants to get probation, but specifically, what burden does it impose?
What burden does it impose? It's
So this is more interest than
right.
Yeah.
Right. I guess I feel as the PIC of the pharmacy, I just feel that we're doing everything in our power to monitor and audit ourselves internally. So I feel
Well, no, that's not my question.
what burden does it impose?
Yeah.
Okay, so
In individual stores, there's quite a burden, but for an organization like Kaiser, it seems like the burden would be less. And not that I don't think, that you should have it shortened. I wondered what burden it does place.
For me personally?
Yeah.
Okay. The only thing additional, I guess, that I would be doing is I am required to fill out a self-assessment quarterly, and I mail that into the board, which I've been doing. That would be my additional burden. I'm privy to board inspector, but that would happen anyways. So, that's it, the self-assessment, I think. Yeah.
No questions.
Can you tell me how the CSOS works?
Yeah, the controlled substance ordering system. So that's electronic way of ordering Schedule 2 items. So you have to, it's a very secure means. You have to make application to the DEA for it first. Then the DEA, once they grant that, they mail you a secure password to your email, and then they also send you a separate secure password, mail you something. You match up the two. You have to go through several steps electronically I don't know the word for it, make sure your computer's set up to, you being the only person that's accessible to it. Then only the pharmacist that is able to have that CSOS is able to actually approve orders and to approve the orders and to order. Yes.
Great. Also, how does the IntelliCap system work?
Okay. Yes. IntelliCap. So that's something that we also got. Kaiser looked into after. I don't know if it was actually related to this probation or not, but timing was there. So it's a secure cabinet system. It works great. So what it is all of our medications are locked in cabinets, our will call prescriptions if you have it. It's actually, we have little boxes or bins, so then when the prescription's being filled on the line, the technician will put all the filled prescriptions in there, it'll come to the pharmacist. They'll have this bin, and there's set up a pad there. It's a software system, so we will actually scan the bin on top of the IntelliPad, scan it, and it automatically will couple it. We use the term coupling. So it's got numbers on, it's got an electronic sensor, and then it's got the bin number on the bin. If it's a Schedule II item, the pharmacist will close it up. They'll walk over to the bin, the cabinets themselves, open it up, put it in the cubby, so it's secure, locked away. The only time it can be, it's open when the clerk is actually selling it. It'll come up on their system electronically. It'll, like for example, their color may be green for the day. It'll flash green. They use their scan card, open up the cabinet, the little cubby will light up the specific cubby, and then they'll pull that particular drug out. If somebody tries to get into something that they don't have access to, they pull the wrong one, it's gonna beep, it's gonna show up right away on the pharmacist's screen, everything comes to a stop, they can't do anything more until the pharmacist finds out what happened. So Untitled, so it's yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi. So it does sound like, the report was pretty impressive, like what Kaiser put in place. But you're the PIC of that pharmacy, so, you can say Kaiser corporate's doing all this stuff, but at the end of the day, if you were the PIC and that was happening, we would hold you accountable. So with that in mind, have they done enough?
Oh, I think so. Yes, actually, before I took on, I take being a PIC very seriously. I've been PICs at other locations. So before I came on board to this pharmacy, when it was on, I learned of the probation, and there was the opening. Kaiser was good enough to let me come in there, make myself feel comfortable with it before I actually took on the role. So yes, I feel confident with it, and that's why I can be here to appeal it, because I feel like we've come a long way.
Were there any suggestions that you made as they were implementing that you said, what did you think about doing this also?
I don't know that I made suggestions, but if we have things, we definitely will bring that up, and they will hear us out. In fact, we have our leaders round with us, if you call it that. They're constantly now have different questions every month. They come in, are you doing this? They'll ask us on our process, and it changes every month. We have accessibility to anybody if we need to. We started a process where just to kind of when our drugs are received, our Schedule II drugs are received, we have a process that we started that my pharmacist, once the drug's actually received, technician will call them over. Any controls, of course, they'll make sure the totes are actually there. They will take the invoices at that time before the technician can get to them. They'll remove all this controlled invoices, and they will lock those up in the Schedule II cabinet. We'll have our drugs right there. As soon as we have our, third pharmacist or whatever comes in for the day, we have adequate staffing. That pharmacist then can remove those out of the cabinet and start unloading and checking in the drugs for the day. So we have try to have it in an uninterrupted process, and that the drugs are secure and the invoices are secure until somebody can actually, get to that task for the day. That's something that we kind of worked on. So as things come about, as I've noticed myself, as there's been gaps in possibly our some of the small things as the internal auditors have come in to do. They're quite strict. So every little signature is missing is what I'm talking about. We have that come up on the audit. So I've had to find ways. How can I prevent that from happening the next time? So I've actually instituted a lot of self-audits, self-double and triple checks, just to make sure one set of eyes missed this. Okay, let's get a second set of eyes to check this before we finally file it away for the day. So we do that with a lot of things. We have 2 sets of eyes looking at things, 3 sets of eyes looking at things, just as a safeguard measure, before we actually file it away.
So that sounds like some internal things that you've done just at your location.
Yes.
Are there any other suggestions that you want to make to Kaiser to maybe make it better?
At this time, no, I can't think of anything, yes.
And when Kaiser asked you, so you said you've been a PIC with Kaiser for about 15 years. When you originally were asked to be a PIC, did you understand what that meant?
Yes. You mean at this location or any location?
At any location.
Yes, I understand. I was a PIC at a pharmacy prior to coming on board with Kaiser as well, yes.
And you went from 15 to 40 some cameras. Who reviews it? Does someone look at the camera footage?
Yes, so there's people in the background that look at it. There's myself as well. I have access to it on my desktop. So even when I'm in my office doing paperwork, at times I have my cameras up. I have a select cameras up that I can view what's going on, out in my lobby, so I can react if necessary. I weekly do an audit. That's one of the things that's on our audit, that we're reviewing cameras, and that's one of the things that gets checked when the auditor comes in as well, that have a log sheet. So, every Monday, basically, I'm gonna check a different camera and I'll go back, several months to make sure that, what footage is there, that it's actually working. So there's people in the background plus myself, yes.
Okay, that's great. Two questions. Are you familiar with the fairly new regulation that the board has around perpetual inventory? Of controlled substances?
The inventory reconciliation, okay, yes. Yes, so we have a report that we run. When we run the reports, it's got the acquisitions and the distributions and then the variances. And so we're able to reconcile, any variances or discrepancies if needed, yes.
Okay, and then I just kind of want to bounce off what Dr. Shad said. Burden, I guess sometimes what we hear is I need to get rid of probation because it's a financial burden to my pharmacy because I can't have this agreement or I can't fill these prescriptions because I'm on probation. In the Kaiser system, since you're kind of supporting that Kaiser, I'm not sure if that's the situation. So I'm just wondering, is there a financial burden as far as if there's prescriptions that you can't fill because you are on probation?
No, there's no, we've never been stopped from filling any prescriptions. The other thing that it would definitely be a plus point, because we are on probation, we are not allowed to have a drug take-back bin in my lobby. So I've had many members come and ask me, nursing staff has come and asked me, and I tell them it's in the works, it's in process, but, I direct them to, another pharmacy, Kaiser Pharmacy, which for, people don't like to drive a distance to do something else. So I love the opportunity to be off probation and to be able to have that drug take back bin in my lobby to be helpful.
Thank you very much for the information.
You're welcome.
Hi, just a couple of questions. One's to follow up on the comment that you made about when you receive your orders and the controlled substances are removed from the totes. What's the process before that then? Who actually receives the totes and opens them up to remove them? And how do you monitor that?
Okay, so the driver, maybe I wasn't clear. The driver comes in, the pharmacist goes back with the inventory technician to, receive the courier driver that's dropping off the totes. They will look for the controlled totes, make sure that the numbers match on the totes that are on the actual invoice. We are getting the number that we have to get. My pharmacists all know this, so this is one of our processes that we have in place. Then they will take those totes. The secure cabinets and the area that they work on is very close to the dispensing end. We have a what do you want to call it, a mirror ball right above it so we can kind of see. So it's right there behind the pharmacist, out of the way, so it's not a workplace safety issue. But they'll put those there, they're still sealed, nobody's gotten into them. The pharmacist will remove the controlled invoice so the technician does not have privy to the controlled invoices. So whatever controlled invoices are on there, they'll lock those up in that cabinet. And then, depending on, usually it's about 10:30 in the morning that we have that other pharmacist, if we can get to that task earlier. So then one pharmacist will go back there, will unlock the totes, verify that everything is there, add the drugs to the perpetual and put the drugs away in the stock. Yeah, so nobody actually is opening or, the totes until the pharmacist actually, who's gonna do the test, gets to it.
You also mentioned that there's a corporate report that reviews your ordering and does some sort of validation. I don't want to use the word reconciliation, but some sort of periodic report that comes from corporate about what is ordered to make sure you've received it. Did I get that correct? That you have a system or corporate report?
Yeah, there's a Cognos report that we call, that we make sure that they have the invoices all listed on them. All the invoices are there. I managed to make.
Does that come from someplace other than your pharmacy? So it comes to you from corporate pharmacy?
Yeah, from corporate.
Are you familiar with how they generate that report? If you're not, that's okay.
Yeah, no, I don't know.
My comment is that sometimes pharmacists believe that they're doing an audit of orders when all they're really auditing is invoices. And that it's really easy for medications and the invoice to disappear. So I just wanted to see if your site is one of the sites that actually do a third-party audit, which is to get a list of ordered medications not using invoices as an audit. But if you're not familiar with
So that would be the inventory reconciliation report, the other one?
No, it's actually much higher up than that. It's that either corporate or your providers, providers, that's the wrong word, your distributors and vendors tell you what they've sent you.
Yeah.
Not using invoices.
Okay, we have a report that Amerisource Berkman sends us.
That would be one of them, yeah, that would be one of them too.
Yes.
And then anything by direct. But I'm assuming, and that may be one of the questions you might want to ask your corporate compliance people, is how they generate their report and what's the source of the report. Because if it's just financial and what the POs that are being paid, then you actually have a gap.
Right. I don't think that the Cognos report that I'm talking about with the invoices, I don't think it's regarding like what POs are being paid. It's more to make sure that an invoice, a drug, and an invoice both haven't disappeared. That I can account for my invoice is what I'm doing. And that's one of the reasons where the pharmacist removes that invoice and locks it away before until something gets.
Now you said two things though. You don't want to confirm it via invoice, what you have in your hand. You want to confirm it via an independent third-party report. So, I would suggest going back and asking, because that's just a loophole that's common in our community. Because people are saying they're auditing orders when all they're doing is auditing invoices, and that's not the same thing.
Okay. Amerisource Bergen sends us, that's the only distributor that we get controlled drugs from, and then they send out a monthly report. So
that would suffice, as long as it's a monthly support what they send you.
Yeah.
It's not that you're auditing your own invoices, because that's just a exercise.
Yes, I understand, yeah.
Yeah, what we try to say is that you have to, based on the report, is that the invoice, because the invoice, they could throw the invoice away, and you would even know. That's happened a lot of cases.
Right. Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
It seems that frequently we have disciplinary matters where people wind up becoming PICs and don't really know what they're getting themselves into. And therefore they make mistakes. And so I'm wondering, does Kaiser happen to have any kind of a PIC training course for people that are going to become PICs?
They have manager training courses, and then we have, which generally the manager is the PIC. So they have manager training courses. They also have our national compliance team that will actually, we have our own internal audit, business practice audit, and it covers a lot of the things that regarding safety and security and that kind of thing, control drugs, all that kind of thing. So the PIC needs to be very familiar with that, particular pieces of that report, because they're self-reporting and then they're being reporting, you know.
Well, the area primarily is in the corresponding responsibility area, that people who wind up being PICs don't understand that they are responsible for that.
Right, and then, you know, we do have our upper leadership, you know, that will round at each, you know, particular pharmacy, you know, making sure that, you know, those specific, you know, their questions for that particular month, I guess, are distributed by region, making sure that those pieces are in place as far as security.
That's it.
Okay, Mr. Gilbert, do you have anything further by way of redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, real briefly. Ms. Laura, I believe Ms. Serpa, if I pronounced your name correctly, had asked you about that question in regard to inventory. And I wasn't sure whether this has been addressed, but can you describe the process by which to maintain, I believe it's a 3-week inventory or a shorter inventory at the facility in relation to making sure that you minimize the amounts on hand?
Yeah, also the question about CSOS was asked as well, but so we have electronic or automatic ordering system now, so there's not basically we shouldn't have more than 3 orders on a par level of 2 to 3 weeks, so we won't have an excess of 3 weeks reordered of our controlled substances.
Thank you. The only other issue I had was I just wanted to recognize that also here from Kaiser is Vidra Azamate, the area pharmacy director, and Jennifer Chavez, the regional pharmacy manager. I wasn't going to call them as witnesses, but in case the board specifically had a question, they are here.
And Mr. Phillips, anything on recross?
Yes, briefly, Your Honor, I have a question about this escort program. In your letter dated March 14th, I believe you called it the pharmacy visitor process, correct?
Yes, correct.
So in your letter, you state that there's now a requirement for all pharmacy visitors and non-scheduled staff to sign in and be escorted throughout their stay in the pharmacy area. What do you mean by non-scheduled staff?
Okay. Yeah, there were times when maybe we were having a special celebration or a staff member from a different pharmacy wanted to come in to have lunch with somebody, in that pharmacy. So, we discourage that basically. So only if you're scheduled to work there should you work there if you're there. If you're a staff member, for example, at the pharmacy down the street and you come over for some reason, you're going to sign in and out of the logbook and you're basically there to do business and return.
So what type? Sorry.
So no, that's it.
So what type of persons are being escorted?
So we have EVS, Environmental Services, which is our housekeeping or janitorial that come in twice a day. They're escorted. We have IT that comes in anytime there's computer issues. They're escorted. We have preventative service or maintenance engineering that comes in to fix things. They're escorted. So the people that have a need to come in to do business work through Kaiser. Any other pharmacist is gonna, if they're not scheduled to work there, they're basically signing in and out of that logbook and then, doing what they need to do to be there. And then,
So you're speaking of persons who are not scheduled to work in the pharmacy at the time, are escorted.
correct.
And so custodial staff, although they're scheduled to work that day, custodial staff would be escorted because they are not scheduled to work within the pharmacy?
Because they're non-pharmacy employees. So anybody that, is not a pharmacy employee, staff of that particular pharmacy's location, if they're coming in, even though they're scheduled to work at Kaiser, they're not scheduled to be, they're not a pharmacy employee.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Okay, are there any further questions from the board? Seeing none, Mr. Gilbert, do you have any further evidence you'd like to present?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Phillips, do you wish to move the closing?
No, Your Honor, we'll waive closing, but again, there is all the fulfillments have been met to go ahead and grant the petition, and I do not see there any reason not to grant the petition. But that's within the discretion of the board. Thank you.
Mr. Gilbert, your closing?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Real briefly, I just wanted to thank the board for its consideration of the petition for early termination. And again, that they probably picked the right person to come in after this event. I hope you were impressed by Ms. Moore. And again, just to express the fact that, as I think some of the board members noted, that this went beyond, I think it's important this went beyond this pharmacy, that the things that were done here and the things that you see done have been implemented across the Kaiser business, and I think to the benefit of the region and the state. And I thank you again for your time.
Okay, thank you. So the record's closed, the matter's submitted, and we're off the record. So let's go ahead and take a short break while we prepare for the next case, which will be Raymond Duro. Consumer Affairs, State of California, in the matter of the petition of Raymond Duro. It's OH number 2019-120-334. My name is Corin Wong. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings, and if I could establish a quorum for the record, starting with Mr. Sanchez.
It's all just right the other side.
Carlos Sanchez, public member.
Albert Wong, professional member.
Alan Shad, professional member.
Ryan Brooks, public member.
Greg Lippy, public member.
Debbie Deal, professional member.
Maria Serpa, professional member.
And let the record reflect that quorum is established. Mr. Phillips, if I could take your appearance for the record, please.
Yes, thank you. Jeffrey Phillips, Office of the Attorney General, on behalf of the Executive Officer of the Board of Pharmacy.
And
Hal, H-A-L, Taylor, T-A-Y-L-O-R. I'm the private counsel for Reno, Nevada, and I represent the respondent, Mr. Durrell, today.
Thank you. Mr. Phillips, do you have the packet to present?
Yes, Your Honor, I have the original. I'd like to mark it Exhibit A for Mr. Raymond Duro's petition.
Thank you. The packet will be,
sure.
We'll go ahead and mark it as Exhibit 1.
Drink it, Jeff.
Mr. Taylor, any objection to 1 for all purposes?
Should I read anything into that, Jeff?
Mr. Taylor, any objection to 1 for all purposes?
No objection, Your Honor.
1 is so admitted. Mr. Phelps, do you wish to give your summary statement this time?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. This petition comes pursuant to Business and Profession Code Section 4309. Mr. Duro is currently on probation, and he has had more than 2 years on the probationary status before bringing this petition. So he qualifies for the petition to be considered, and then in considering whether or not there should be an early termination of his probation, again, this board should look to the activities since the petitioner was put on probation. What has he done to remedy the situation, the accusation? Number 2, we take a look at the seriousness of the offense that occurred that imposed the discipline. Number 3, the petitioner's activities during the time the license was in good standing. So Mr. Duro has been a pharmacist for nearly 11 years. The board should take a look at his entire licensed time in terms of any discipline that he has had. And number 4, the petitioner's rehabilitation efforts, which is documented in the petition, and then lastly, the petitioner's general reputation for truth and professional ability. As I mentioned earlier, the petitioner was issued a pharmacist license in October 2018, so it's been about 11 years. The incident that brought rise to the discipline was that at around December 2nd, 2013, the petitioner was hired by Plymouth District Hospital, which is in a small town of Quincy up in the mountains, as a pharmacist consultant to help convert from a pharmacy to a drug room at the hospital. It's a small rural hospital. And to help with remote pharmacist verifications. He was pharmacist in charge on approximately 3 days. This is a facility that has had a lot of pharmacists in charge, and the accusation outlines pretty much a revolving pharmacist in charge at this facility. So there were issues there. A board inspection occurred on January 14, 2014, and found that the pharmacy technician was essentially working in the capacity as a pharmacist. A pharmacy technician was working without a pharmacist supervising them. Responded, terminated his contract the next month, about 2 weeks later, with Plumas District Hospital for reasons that are unknown, that you might hear about them later today. After respondent terminated his contract as to help convert this pharmacy to a drug room, again the pharmacy technician was found working again without a pharmacist in place. At the time, respondent was still working as, not as a consultant, but working on the remote verifications of pharmacists. So he did have some contact and some contractual relationship with Plumas District Hospital. When inquired by the Board of Pharmacy inspector about his duties and what he did there, he gave a false statement. He said he never worked for this pharmacy except on the day of the inspection. He just happened to find me there, and that's the one and only day that I was working as pharmacist in charge. But as respondent statement says that while he was working and helping on the remote pharmacist verifications, he did sign some documents as pharmacist in charge. And those documents were, first of all, that he signed for receipt of Schedule II controlled substances, and also he also signed receipt as a pharmacist in charge for controlled substances for the Plumas District Hospital when he didn't have the appropriate power of attorney to have authorization to sign for the Schedule II. It appears that might have been somewhat of a mistake in the paperwork, which shows the certification which respondent can address and did address in his petition. As a result, the accusation was filed in November of 2016, and a settlement was stipulated to. There was an agreement. The agreement was that, first of all, he would not contest the charges of the accusation, so this board could consider them as true. The discipline that was imposed during probation were standard terms 1 through 15, because this is a Category 2 violation according to the disciplinary guidelines. In addition, there were additional terms. First of all, remedial education, term 27. Respondent could not own any premises, term 32, while on probation, and to take an ethics course. He's complied with that. His remedial education was 8 hours a year. He's completed 24 hours of remedial education. He's completed the ethics course, and we paid costs to the board in the amount of $3,396, and his continuing education that he submitted in his petition are just over 62 hours. As a petition for early termination probation, respondent is currently a retail pharmacist for Quincy Pharmacy in Plumas County. He lives in Reno, Nevada, and commutes from Reno. He's a 3-year probation period ends on October 19th, 2020, and he submitted 16 letters of recommendation in support of the petition. So all the requirements to grant the petition have been met, and it's up to this board to determine whether or not they are going to grant the petition based upon the considerations in section 43 of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Mr. Taylor, if you'd like to call your first witness.
Your Honor, your Honor's indulgence, I need to speak to counsel. No. No, I got it. Yes, you can. We both heard it.
Okay, if I, according to my notes, it says that he was pharmacist in charge for 3 years.
Well, you have the opportunity.
Yeah,
You
you don't get the
opportunity.
opportunity.
You have the opportunity to provide.
Well, I understand that. Part of the concern I have is that there was another individual in this case named Dono, I believe. And I wonder if there may simply be some confusion on that. Our position is he was never pharmacist in charge, and indeed was never actually hired as a pharmacist per se for this facility.
So far, there's been absolutely no evidence of whether he was or was not pharmacist in charge.
Sure.
As you know, Mr. Phillips' statement, his opening statement, is not evidence. So,
I understand.
Would you like to call your first witness?
Yeah, let me make a brief statement. I know you don't want to hear from me, okay? You want to hear from
That's
me.
not true. Just
I will try to stay out of your way. Your Honor, I mentioned to you before we started, we will have 2 brief character witnesses, and just so your record is clear, one of them would be Jim Corryman, Kooyman. The other will be Karen Turner, Turner. She also submitted a letter to the board, and we'll call those at the end of all the other evidence. What I'm going to do today, hopefully, is not rehash the original allegations. We're going to try to talk in terms of what Mr. Duro has learned and from this entire experience, and it gives the board the information they hopefully need to make an informed decision. Mr. Duro,
Wait.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Are you calling a witness? If so, are you calling, and we need to have him or her sworn?
Absolutely, sorry.
So are you calling Mr. Duro?
I'm
Are you
sorry.
calling Mr. Duro at this time?
I will be calling him, yes.
Okay, Mr. Duro, if I can have you raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you will provide in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, you may put your hand down. If you would spell your name for the record, please.
RAYMOND-DURO.
Okay, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you. Mr. Duro, the allegations which occurred in this case, in which the board, in which you stipulated to previously at the time of discipline, what else? Well, let's do this. What was your relationship at that time with the Plumas District Hospital?
I was hired on to be their consultant to convert from a licensed pharmacy to a licensed drug room. On December 2nd, 2013, I signed on a contract as a consultant, and then a month later, about January 14, 2014, the board came to inspect. After that first inspection, I severed my consulting contract on February 2nd, 2014.
And did you continue to have some sort of relationship with the hospital?
Yes, I was hired on as their consultant to convert the pharmacy to a drug room, as well as the remote pharmacy verification.
Now, at the time the incidents happened, which led to the discipline, had this facility, in fact, completed the conversion from a pharmacy to a drug facility?
Yes, after the investigations, the previous chief nursing officer and CEO were let go. They had new staff, new CEO, new chief nursing officer, and a new consultant. And it was subsequently converted to a drug room. They are now a drug room under probation for 5 years, I believe. And during the transition time from pharmacy to drug room, I also helped them as as an actual pharmacist to staff the pharmacy while they were doing the conversion to a program.
But at the time that the pharmacy tech was involved in apparently practicing outside of scope, at that point had this facility been converted to a drug room?
No, they have not.
If I can't hear you, they can.
No, they have not.
Okay. Now, what I didn't hear is that you were hired by Plumas District Hospital to act as a pharmacist. Were you in fact retained as a pharmacist at that time?
No, I was not.
Yet when we take a look at the record, there were at least 3 instances where I think you signed off on shipments on paperwork that would require you to be a pharmacist in order to perform those duties. How did that come about?
In my usual duties as the consultant pharmacist, I was there, so I was the one that was licensed, so I took on the responsibility to sign off on the orders.
And as you understand at that point, you were in fact functioning as a pharmacist?
No, I didn't. It's a matter of throughout.
Let me ask the questions. You've got 2 roles here. You've got a role as somebody who's got a contract to provide consulting services, and you've got a license as a pharmacist. Now, at the time these incidents occurred, what we're looking for is what was your mind state at that point? Did you think you were working as a consultant, or did you think you were working as a pharmacist? Or what? What was your thought process?
My thought process was I was just a consultant. I tried to do the right thing by helping the facility out. In hindsight, I should have known that doing so, signing documents for the pharmacy, that I delved into the pharmacist role. And so it's taken me all these years to realize that role. And I paid the price for it, for not knowing what my role was initially with the facility.
So you have reason to believe, based upon your observations, if I read all these allegations correctly, that there was somebody there who was a pharmacy tech who in fact was not receiving proper supervision. Is that correct?
Judge, you know, this line of questioning is leading.
He's absolutely right. I'll rephrase. When you saw the pharmacy tech operating during this period of time, did you feel at that point you had any responsibility regarding what she was doing?
I felt like my contract was just the consulting part. This is where I didn't see the forest from the trees. So I felt like, well, that was not part of my contract. I'm here to just do the conversion. Somebody else can handle that. But ultimately, I am a pharmacist first, and then consultant second. And through the ethics course that I took proactively, as well as from the Board of Pharmacy's mandate, that it took me that long to realize that it is in fact my responsibility to be aware that unlicensed persons should be reported.
With regards to your contract and the conversion of this facility, was this the first time you had done any sort of consulting with regards to conversion activity?
Correct. My 2 other facilities that I do as a drug room consultant, they are already converted as a drug room, licensed as a drug room. This is my first foray into a pharmacy to a drug room conversion. So, to say the least, I was a little bit in over my head.
Other than operating under this contract with the Plumas District Hospital and the verification activities, what other pharmaceutical activities, what other jobs were you operating at the time this occurred?
I'm a clinical pharmacist for a 100-bed hospital in Northern Nevada Medical Center in Sparks, Nevada, where I am a clinical lead pharmacist. I have helped implement an antibiotic stewardship program. I run their pharmacokinetic anticoagulation dosing services. With regards to the antibiotic stewardship program, I ran twice a week with an infectious disease specialist to better facilitate antibiotic utilization in our facility. And then during my probationary status, I've also have gained a new certification in sterile compounding, where I am now the designee for my hospital facility for USP 797 and USP 800. And my other role is a remote pharmacist certification as well, still.
Eventually, after this board's action placing on probation, did this matter come up before the Nevada board?
Yes, I self-reported to the Nevada Board of Pharmacy, and I also I notified Deanne Potter, which was my probation analyst, and as well as Jean Russell, who was the other analyst as well, emailed her the documents. As a result of my probationary period in California, Nevada board.
Let me ask the question. You got to understand, lawyers are control freaks. Let me ask you now. You're under 3-year probation in California, and I was your attorney, so I know that in Nevada you're also under 3 years probation based upon the California board's action. And I also understand that Nevada has a similar rule to California, which is your probation doesn't run unless you're actually employed in that state. So in that context, would you explain to the board what your current employment situation is?
I work about 30 to 40 hours a week in Nevada to satisfy that probationary term. And then I do the 40 hours a month for California to satisfy their probationary term per the order.
So what I want to do, you filed a petition. You filed a petition to have this 3-year probation end early. And in your statement on page 3 of the first full paragraph, you say, quote, "I have learned a lot in terms of being a professional and being accountable," end quote. So what I want to ask you is, would you tell the board what you believe that you've learned from the experience of going through the discipline and also obviously the requirements of the probationary period?
Personally and professionally, this is probably one of the hardest things I've had to go through. To have a board or any other agency for that matter grab your license and have an effect on your ability to live is very eye-opening, and I accept those, and that was with acceptance of my actions, or for a better word, inactions in my role in this case. But in terms of learning, just being a professional and just being accountable for all my actions and inactions as well. When I look back at that time period in my life, I see that I could have done better. I could have been a better consultant. I could have alerted the board that, hey, there might be something going on. This person might be might not be supervised properly, and that's the biggest regret I've had to I keep living over and over again. In terms of remediating, I've satisfied, like they said, satisfied all my remedial education and added some more. I've added my sterile compounding certification. I've maintained my clinical pharmacist certification, advanced cardiac life support, and pediatric life support as I'm required to go to codes during in my hospital. So I accept full responsibility for what I did and hope to, and I've learned a lot through this whole process. I hope to never be here again.
Well, that was my next question, which is what can you say to this board that will assure you that if they in fact are willing to grant some time off in probation, how can this board be assured that they're not going to see you back here at some point? What's your thought process on that?
I think just from doing proactive stuff in terms of my ethics course post a board term, I took by professional boundaries, I took a maintenance and accountability seminar with Dr. Chantal, just completed this past August, and that was really eye-opening in terms of just continuing the process of remediation and just deepening my understanding of my role as a pharmacist.
Your Honor's indulgence. There was a $1,500 administrative fine in Nevada. Has that been paid also?
Correct. I am current and I'm current with my probation standing in Nevada as well.
I think those are all the questions I have.
Mr. Phillips, any questions on cross?
Yes, Your Honor, just a few. Earlier you testified that you could have been a better consultant, and you alluded to the fact you could have alerted the board, maybe that there's a pharmacy tech working in the pharmacist in place. Now you have the benefit of hindsight. What would have you done differently with regard to signing off on those documents as a pharmacist when you were just a consultant, and ensuring that there's a pharmacist in place when the pharmacy tech is on duty if you're consulting with the organization? Because I see that you continue to be a consultant. What would you do differently?
I'm sorry. In terms of right now, if I continue to be a consultant, what would I do differently?
Going back to the incidents in the accusation, how would you handle them now? What would you do differently?
I would definitely seek. I would definitely alert it to the administrators, and I would definitely call the board of pharmacy, an inspector in this case.
Alert what?
That there is an unsupervised tech in the pharmacy.
And then what about the paperwork? If you are asked to sign paperwork as a pharmacist, what would you have done differently? How would you have handled that?
I would have never signed that. Knowing what I know now, I would never sign a document. No.
So what would you say if someone approaches you with this document saying, "Are you a pharmacist? Yes. Can you sign this?" How would you handle it?
I am a pharmacist, but no, I cannot sign this because I am not. My role here is not as pharmacist, but I mean, that's what I would say.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, any questions by the board? Mr. Sanchez?
He likes it. He likes it. The next case will start over here.
I don't have any more. No, I don't have any questions. Thank you for coming.
No question.
I got some questions. It sounds like this setup where they have tech working, it was supported by the administration of the hospital and was an ongoing thing. And is that correct? As far as you know.
As far as now, after I dissociated, I found out a lot about the facility. Yes, the administrators were handing the keys to the tech, unbeknownst to me until I severed that contract. So yes, they were handing the keys after hours to the technician.
And how come there is such a revolving door of pharmacists there?
Well, Thomas District Hospital is unique. It's in the middle of the Sierras,
Right.
so it's very hard to get to, especially in this type of season. The drive is often treacherous and snowing and icy on the roads. So when they had PICs or relief pharmacists, most of the time they couldn't make it over the hill. So when they couldn't make it over the hill, the administrators just gave the keys to the tech.
And then you said you took two more points. It says that you took this additional course. Tell me a little more about this additional course. How come you took it and what was covered? Just be short.
Okay. So it's the additional ethics course by Dr. Chantal. I loved the way he taught his classes so much that I was game for another round. It's actually super helpful to hear about other professionals that have gone through it and that are continuing to go through it. In terms of professional boundaries and ethically and what you should be doing as a professional.
Sounds like you kind of embraced this.
Oh, I have, definitely.
And then the same question I asked previously about it sounds like you're working a lot right now. And usually people on probation have trouble finding employment. So what aside from nobody wants to be on probation, I certainly understand that from a professional point of view. What burdens would be lifted?
The hardest part for me being probation was finding the 40 hours a month in California because I wanted it. I wanted to satisfy that, and I thought I owed that. So I was lucky and thankful enough to have a friend that had opened a pharmacy in Quincy, and she needed a body, and I'm there. But in terms of getting off probation, I think there's a couple of burdens that would be lifted. One is my killer commute in the winter, because it's an hour and 45 minutes in the snow and ice. And two is the financial part of being on probation. As a result, I could not consult. I was a consultant for drug rooms as well as the skilled nursing facilities. I had over 8 skilled nursing facilities to my contractually, and I had to let all those facilities go. So those are the top 2 things that I think the burden will be lifted on.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. So, how did you hear about this particular opportunity for a contract from that version?
I've already had 2 drug rooms that I consulted. One is in Portola, California, which is about 45 minutes away from Quincy, and then one is in Chester, California, which is about, say, another hour from Quincy, California. So these are all small critical care access hospitals, about 5 to 6 beds, and little towns and populations about 2,000 to 5,000. So they've gotten word that, hey, there's a guy that does our drug room. Why don't you ask him to convert it? So I should have done better research on this facility that I undertook, and I didn't, and that's my fault, and I take full responsibility for that.
And that's where I was going, is, when you take on a new client, and especially your pharmacist, it's incumbent on you to do the necessary research and due diligence to make sure you're putting yourself in an environment for success.
Correct. I wholeheartedly agree with that.
And then how many days on the contract had you worked at the facility prior to the inspection?
Prior to the inspection, I believe I visited maybe 2 or 3 times. I can't recall specifically.
Around 2 or 3 times. And out of those 2 or 3 times, was there ever a time when there was a pharmacist on site with the pharm tech?
There was never a pharmacist on site with the pharm tech.
And so, did you take a step back and say, as a pharmacist, there is a problem, I shouldn't be doing this? Or you just keep going because you had a contract?
Correct. My contractual agreement was I'm there to convert it to a drug room, and so that's why I'm there. And this is why I said the statement, not seeing the forest from the trees. So, and that's my responsibility, and I failed.
And I'm assuming going back, looking back on this, you never walk into a situation where you identify there's a problem, even though you're not acting as a pharmacist, you do have a pharmacy license and you would report that, I'm assuming.
Correct. I am a pharmacist at first, and everything else is secondary to that. Correct.
No other questions, thank you.
Did, on these two contracts that you had before this one for a drug room, were those also to assist in the conversion to a drug room, or?
There were already licensed programs.
So you made the comment that you were over your head in this one. So that means you never had experience in terms of converting.
Correct. This was my first foray into converting an actual licensed pharmacy into a licensed program. I've never done it.
Done anything like that since?
No.
You intend to do that?
No, I do not intend to do that ever.
Okay. Do you plan to continue practicing in California and living in Nevada, or is this mainly in order to be able to get your Nevada license back?
I before I was disciplined, I worked in both sides. I did my consulting mainly in California, and I did my clinical pharmacist work in the hospital in Nevada. So I just plan to keep going the way I'm going.
So you plan to still practice in
Correct.
both states?
Yes, sir.
But different types of practice?
Yes, sir.
And I may have overlooked it, but have you paid your investigation costs to California?
Everything, sir.
Everything, okay. And, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Phillips, you agree that he's paid all of his costs?
That's the information I have, yes. I have not personally received the check, but I believe the board has.
Okay.
I wrote it. Believe me.
So do you know who the PIC was for that pharmacy?
On that short stretch of my contract, I think there was a revolving door. I think initially it was by the name of Dano, was the one during my consulting stint.
Okay.
My short, brief.
So when you were there and you kind of got caught in that situation, were you really kind of expecting that Mr. Dano should have been there?
Mrs. Dano should have been there, yes. I was led to believe during our talks that, hey, we have this pharmacist coming from Sacramento. You're just here to help us convert it, and once that happens, then you're just going to be our consultant once that happens.
Okay. And when you said that you were a nursing home and long-term care consultant, I think you answered his question that was in California.
Yes, ma'am. Well, both California and Nevada. I was a consultant for a lot of these critical care access hospitals have a nursing home attached to them.
Oh, okay.
Portola does. Quincy does not. Seneca Healthcare District Hospital does. And a lot of my other skilled nursing facilities were just standalones. And I consulted through Permanente with this.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have one question that I wanted to clarify, because when I looked at the record, I think that Dr. Dano was no longer employed for several months, if not longer, but failed to notify the board that she was no longer PIC. So there was no PIC present, but on the record she was the PIC, but she was not employed at the facility. That's how I read the record. So it sounds like during your verbal discussions with the CEO and the CNO, different information was given to you than what was in your documents.
Correct.
Dr. Serpa, if I may interrupt, that's what the accusation shows, exactly what he said, yes.
So the PIC failed to notify the board, but was no longer employed at that facility.
That's what the accusation alleges, yes.
So the clarification I have is, it was very clear that the crux of the issue are 3 signatures. and you commented on the delivery signatures. Can you give us a little bit of background on the issue with the it wasn't CSOF, it was the DEA 222 form signature, and why you thought you had power of attorney but didn't?
I was asked by a facility, because in my other facility in Portola, I do order C2s because I'm a consultant, and I feel strongly that I should control the intake of narcotics because I'm the pharmacist licensed. But in this case, they had asked me, well, our narcotics for the facility is running low, or would you be willing to order some just to get a spot for this many weeks or this many days? And I agreed, and I signed off on the 222 with me and the CEO. Well, after the sign, I should have gotten a photocopy, but I did not. When we were able to locate the 222 during the investigational phase, it turns out that another party had signed where on the bottom of that sheet that it had been voided and nulled, and so thereby my authority to order the 222s was gone.
I think that your power of attorney.
Yes, correct.
Right, so if I'm hearing you correctly, you had filled out a power of attorney, you were unaware that it was not valid, and when you signed the DEA 222 form, you thought that was within your authority.
Correct.
And was only later when you found out that the power of attorney was not valid, that put that signature into question.
Correct, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Taylor, anything further on redirect?
I have no further questions to this witness, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you very much. We're excused, Mr. Duro, you're excused as a witness. Mr. Taylor, it's my understanding you have two other witnesses?
Yeah, so just be short witnesses.
Okay, if you'd like to be the next witness.
Yes, Mr. Kuhlman, would you come up here, please?
Sir, if you would raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you will provide in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, you may put your hand down. Would you state and spell your full name for the record, please?
James Koyman, Kooyman.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
Yes, would you identify your position?
I'm the Human Resources Manager at Seneca Healthcare District.
And you have a statement regarding Mr. Hurley that you would like to make to the board?
Yes, I'd just like to make a statement that, as I said before, with Seneca Healthcare District, I'm the Human Resources Manager. We are basically about an hour north of Quincy. Mr. Duro was working as a consultant. We have a drug room and we have a long-term care facility. And he was working as a consultant up until his probationary period and still works with us remotely. I'm here in an official capacity of the hospital or the healthcare district and the medical staff to support Mr. Duro in his application. And that's all the statement I need to make, unless you have any questions.
All right. Mr. Phillips, any questions?
Yeah. Do you work with Mr. Duro?
I don't work directly with Mr. Duro, no.
What's the relationship between Seneca Healthcare District and Mr. Duro currently?
He works remotely, still.
And how long a period of time has he worked remotely?
Since the probationary period, from what I understand.
And has there ever, are you privy to performance evaluations, or is there any kind of feedback that you get from staff with regard to the petitioners?
As far as my capacity here, no. I'm only here to represent the hospital and the med staff who have asked me to come and show support as the hospital itself. Ms. Turner, who's coming in shortly, has a more intimate experience with him.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay. Are there any questions by the board, starting with Dr. Serba?
No questions. No questions.
No question. Just a brief question. So, you just say that you've never worked with them?
Correct.
Right. And so how many times have you done it prior to this today?
I'm sorry, say again?
How many times have you been Mr. Duro prior to this today?
Perhaps once.
Perhaps once.
Yes.
And then how comfortable do you feel given the character, the statement about Mr. Duro, you've only met him one time?
I'm only making a statement that came from the physicians and as the hospital in general, they have asked me to come forward.
So you're the proxy?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. And I would call next Karen Turner, please.
Please raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you will provide in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? You may put your hand down, and if you would state and spell your full name for the record, please.
Karen Turner, Karenturner.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
Yes, Ms. Turner, would you identify your position, please?
I am presently the Chief Nursing Officer at Seneca District Hospital. It's a small critical access hospital in Chester, California, up in the mountains. And I believe Mr. Coleman said that we're about an hour or so from Quincy and another hour and a half from Eastern Plumas, kind of like our sister hospitals.
And how long have you known Mr. Duro?
Approximately 9 years.
And have you in fact worked with him in the past?
Yes, I have.
And would you explain your working relationship with him, please?
When I first started working with Mr. Duro, I was the drug room nurse at the facility. I believe it was back in maybe 2011. I don't know the date exactly. But he was our consultant pharmacist, and I was the person responsible for the drug room, the condition of the drug room, the inventory of the drug room, the receiving of medications, and the dispersing of the medications to our PICSs that we have at the hospital, under the direction of Mr. Duro.
And what were your impressions of Mr. Duro in terms of his professional capacity?
It was pretty tough on me. He's pretty professional, but he's downright professional. This was my first, I was an experienced RN, but this was my first stab at doing a drug room. I came to work at this facility approximately 4 years prior to that, and had been working as an assistant to the other pharmacist that was there. And they had another, I'm trying to think, they had another drug room nurse, and she trained me. So when Ray came along, we worked really well together as a team. Ray was pretty demanding on us following our regulations and our policies and procedures, and I had quite a bit of experience with some previous surveys as to knowing it's always better to follow your policies and procedures and have your regulations and your I's dotted and your T's crossed to know that we had a job to do in that pharmacy, in that drug room. So the first pharmacist I worked with, I didn't get as much direction as I did from Ray. Ray really helped me understand what needed to be done at that facility. And he was available to me for questions anytime I needed them. Ray attended all of the meetings. He was responsible also for our attached skilled nursing facility, which is a daunting task in itself with all of the medications and things that we have to do down there. So we really appreciated the help and the ease of being able to talk to him and ask him the questions that we needed answered. And we went through several surveys that were really outstanding. We had no issues, we had no diversion problems, we had no medication errors. We had really nothing wrong with our hospital short of they didn't like the thermometer on our refrigerator. So in the time that I've known Ray and that we've done this together, the drug room worked pretty smoothly. And then when I took the position as the CNO, I had taken the position as the interim CNO 4 times. We had a revolving door of CNOs. and I've now been in that position for 5 years. I still oversee the drug room, and I'm still responsible for the disposition of the medications and the receiving of the medications. So it's still my responsibility. It's a dual role for me.
And if this board were to take the actions being requested to today, would you have any concerns whatsoever with regards to health, safety, and welfare of your patients if Mr. Duro were to work in your facility again?
Absolutely not.
Do you believe it would be a benefit to your patients if he were allowed to come back and be able to work in your facility?
We greatly missed Mr. Doro at our hospital. We have a consulting pharmacist that works with us now, but we had a system, and our system worked, and it flowed smoothly. And it's for the last 2 years it's worked, but it hasn't smooth. It hasn't been as smooth. Hasn't been as easy. I guess it's because I started out with him and not with this new person. It was a little easier for me. So, but yes, we're desperately hoping he comes back soon.
Those are all the questions I have, Your Honor.
Mr. Phillips, cross-examination?
I have no questions at this time.
Are there any questions by the board, starting with Dr. Serpa?
No question.
No questions.
No questions.
Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Taylor, any further evidence?
No more evidence, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Phillips, do you wish to give a closing?
Briefly, Your Honor, all the conditions are met for this board to accept and grant the petition, and I do not see any reason not to. It's within the discretion of the board what to do with this petition. Thank you.
Mr. Taylor, your closing?
I'm going to focus on a small matter. I'm going to try to make it short. I'm a lawyer. I'll try to make it short. One of the things that, other than the fact I've spent a lot of time with my client, we talked a lot about pharmacy. And my dad owned a drugstore out in Iowa, so I have he wasn't a pharmacist, but I have some empathy for the process. But here's what impresses me. I've represented a number of dual licensees, usually California and Nevada, some of whom have ended up on probation. As we all know, the rule is here and in Nevada, if you're not working in the state, your probation is not running. What tends to happen is that licensee decides where they want to practice. They practice there. They hopefully get through their probation fine, and they're granted a license in that jurisdiction. And someplace over the other state, this file just, gets dusty or something because they never get the time in. I'll tell you what impresses me here is that he's been working to get his license in both states. That's unusual. That's an unusual commitment to the profession, I'm going to suggest. So what I'm about to tell you is not a legal fact or a legal concept at all, but I think it's a real concept. Don't think about this case about somebody who's asking you to take a year off his 3-year probation. 2 years in California. 2 years in California. Think of it as he's done 4 years of probation, because that's really what he's done. When you take a look at what he's doing in Nevada and then he's driving, up to work in this other facility, he's really made a commitment to successfully completing probation in both states, and I think that says something significant as to his character and to his commitment to the profession. Thank you very much.
Okay, so the record's closed, the matter is submitted, and we're off the record. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, we are going to take a short recess, but then we will be going into closed session.
Why don't we go automatically to closed session?
Well, we can do it if you want.
Yeah, so it's automatically go to closed session.
That's fine, that's fine. Okay. We'll go into closed session.
Thank you all.
Thank you.